Hey, everything's good. Nice to meet you, man.
Likewise.
Where are you at on the planet?
I live in Mexico City.
Oh, right on. Very
hmm
cool. Well, I'm in the
Yeah.
middle of America. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri,
Ah, nice.
one of the jazz cradles. So,
hmm
yeah. So it's nice to meet you, man. Before we get into your latest album and your world of music, I want to know right now, today, 5 years ago, we were all like, "What is happening?" The pandemic was beginning. We were all trying to get through it, and it did specific things to the world of artists and musicians. So ultimately, living through that time period, what kind of reverberations through living through that has still affected the way that you do what you do today as an artist and a musician?
Huh. Um, I think the most significant thing that I did in 2020 was get a full-time job. Uh, I had been doing like freelance work to support myself for a long time, and I was like, this is not working.
Yeah.
So I got a full-time job, working remotely for a tech company, and I still have that job. And that's been a really significant thing in my life because it's allowed me to continue playing music, basically. Like I have faith in myself and faith in my music that it's good, that it's worth recording and releasing and performing and
Yeah.
writing, rehearsing, blah, blah, blah. But, my music has never been popular. It's never sold. I've never made a living from it.
Yeah.
It was like, all right, now the trying to find a polite way to say when the S hits the fan, like it's now or never. It's
Yeah.
like I have to make this decision to find a way to support myself outside of music in order to continue playing music or not.
Right.
And it was a big decision, one that was more complicated than it should have been. Because Joe, like I lived in New York for like I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
And the whole time, almost the whole time I was living there, I was working two part-time jobs. And I was working two part-time jobs because there was this voice in my head that said, if you get a full-time job, you're not an artist anymore, you know?
Gotcha.
But the thing about that is that working two part-time jobs, that's 70 hours. Working one full-time job, that's 40. So like actually you're working a lot less as with a full-time job than with two part-time jobs, and you'll have more time to dedicate to your art with a full-time job than with multiple spinning part-time jobs.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So today's your release day for the
hmm
album.
Yeah.
What do you do? What's been the celebration? What's been the jubilation of this release day?
Uh, well, this morning, I feel relieved. I've been mostly like panicking all week. I've been telling friends like, the sensation of having like a dinner party at 8 p.m. and 8 p.m. rolls around and no one's arrived yet. Then it's 8:30 and you're wondering like, do I have any friends? Is anyone going to come? Does anyone love me?
Yeah.
Been like that sensation all week.
Yeah.
Um, but now that it's like the day, I feel like super relieved and happy.
That's wild. It's almost kind of like the human emotion or the human thought of like your funeral. You know? I don't want to get really dark, but you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
who's gonna
Yeah.
care? Like, because
Uh-huh.
that's the thing that I think is the weirdest thing about being a human being is that would be the one event where you would want to see the people show up.
Yeah.
Like, who's really going to
Yeah.
celebrate the fact that you had an existence on this planet?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the moment. But so these little artistic moments, which is kind of the metaphor, is that you just put a piece of yourself out there, which is what we do as human beings. And it's
hmm
like on these, and that's the beauty of being an artist. All of these little creations, you get all of these mini funeral moments, I guess, where people celebrate the fact that you've done something stellar.
Yeah. Lots of little deaths. Uh,
Yes.
yeah. No, it's really something. And this one is very special for me. Like I would say that this is a jazz record, and the last time I put something out that I would say is also a jazz record was in 2008. Everything in between has been more along the lines of like noise or experimental music or totally improvised music or some kind of a combination of those three. Um, So it feels like it's been a long time coming, and I think that was why it was so stressful, stressful waiting for
Sure.
it to come out. And why it's such a relief that it's out now. And now I kind of don't care, right? It's like
Yeah.
I don't care how many people listen to it. I don't care how many reviews happen. I would love for there to be reviews and all that good stuff, but it's good that it's out there. Clears the way for more. So
So speaking of all the eardrums that are going to listen to this music, what are you ultimately hoping people get from this creation?
my music is about intimacy, um, and sentiment. So I hope they feel something. Something like, yeah, something like love. That's what I hope.
Yeah. So how did this journey begin for you? Take me to the beginnings of your life. How did music and jazz and experimentation and artistry, how did all of these kind of become your world?
Uh, I've always been very interested in music. I used to like whistle all the time as a kid. And then I don't know if it's the same in Kansas City, but I grew up near Chicago, and
Yeah.
like every public school in Chicago, you pick up an instrument when you turn like 12. And the two instruments that were in my family were the trumpet, which my brother-in-law played, and the trombone, which my brother played. So those are my two options because there were like extras laying
Yeah.
around. And couldn't figure out the trombone. Thought it was really awkward, but I immediately could do stuff on the trumpet. Felt natural to me. So I started there. And then at the high school I went to, and that my brother also went to, my older brother, there were like multiple levels of jazz band, which was amazing actually. But that meant that there was basically like a varsity jazz band, right? So there's most high schools have like a varsity sports team, and ours had like a varsity jazz band
Yeah.
that had their own jackets and like all this stuff. And like when I went to see my brother playing concerts with that band, I was like, this is so cool. I want to be in this jazz band. So I was like, I think that's what inspired me to like start playing jazz. And then I just fell in love with it and continued. And then, yeah, hasn't really been nothing in my life has been a direct path. But when I got to university, um, I went to a university where my dog's coming to say hi, sorry.
Oh
I
no,
went to
you're
a
good.
university, yeah, um, where there was the music conservatory, an art school, dance conservatory, film school, pretty good writing program. Um, and kind of discovered a lot of other ways of seeing the world. I was kind of pushed into it a little bit also. Like I'm a queer person, and being a queer, especially like a not obviously presenting queer person at a jazz program in 2003 was a little weird. There was still a lot of homophobia and misogyny
Yeah.
uh, in that world at that time. And so I was kind of pushed away from it and more into like the art school. Um, and then, yeah, through that discovered other kinds of music, other kinds of creativity. And yeah, I've been exploring more of that for a long time. But gosh, this is a long story, Joe. And then like
Yeah.
that, like and you're like, yeah, this is a long story.
No, 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 it's good. You're knocking down a lot of dominoes and yeah. No, and I was just thinking,
Yeah,
roll a quick segue here. How
yeah.
instrumental has the lore and the good of Fred Hirsch, because he's really somebody that's been on the forefront too. How,
Really, gosh, it's funny that you asked me that. So when I first started at college at university, I went to school at SUNY Purchase, north of New York City. Um, and I was like, what do I do as like a gay jazz musician? I was like, oh, okay, I'll ask Fred Hirsch. So I wrote him an email, and I took a couple of lessons with him, and he was great because he did not hold back about anything, musically, personally, otherwise. He gave me, what did he tell me? One, don't be too ambitious, which was very good advice. I think that's helped me not release anything jazz related for 16 years. Two, I think he just told me two things. Don't be too ambitious and like go to therapy. And like I ignored him about therapy for like until yeah, 7 years ago, 8 years ago. For a long time I ignored him.
Yeah,
That was also really good advice. I would give the same advice to anyone who came to me for a lesson. Like, don't be too ambitious, enjoy your life, live your life, because that's what your music's going to be about. And like go to therapy because it helps.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What was the first live jazz show you saw that blew you away or that made you think, I want to do that one day? And it doesn't have to be just jazz, it can be any show.
That blew me away. Well, I mean, the first was like seeing my brother with this varsity jazz band, but the other one I would put is seeing the Cecil. There was like Cecil Taylor large ensemble played at the Iridium when which was like a club in the I don't know where Hell's Kitchen in
Yeah.
Manhattan.
Yeah.
Uh, I think I saw them in like 2004, maybe in my second year of university. I remember every detail of that night very clearly. It was like maybe a 12-person ensemble, and the music was not super, what's the right word to use here? What really struck me was that an idea would start in one part of the ensemble and then it kind of would like shift across the entire ensemble in this very organic way. No one was giving any cues. It wasn't like anyone was like waving their hands around or dancing around in front of the group or anything. And I was like, wow, this is like totally, yeah, totally organic and democratic and horizontal. And yet, like, no one's having to direct. There's no like authoritative figure who's like, striking down the ideas to the band or whatnot. And like, um, that was very inspiring to me. And a lot of, yeah, just seeing the way that organically unfolded and that it made so much sense and that thematically it made sense and time-wise it made sense. It wasn't like without a director, everyone played for like 7 hours. It was like there were two discrete 40 minute sets that made total sense within themselves. And I was like, this is like watching weather happen. It's like watching a squall come across the sea. It was beautiful. It
Yeah.
really, really stuck. Will always stick with me, I think.
So, how did you end up in Mexico City?
Uh, So I lived in New York for 6 or 7 years, and then I went to grad school. Studied like conceptual art, basically, or social practice, which is like socially oriented conceptual art, in San Francisco. And I lived in Oakland and studied in San Francisco, and then moved to LA for a year. And at the time, I was dating a Mexican guy who wanted to go home, and I knew some musicians here, and I felt like it'd be a good, or it'd be like a easy landing, I guess. And I also kind of wanted to get out of LA. I was working at that point, my like side jobs, my two part-time jobs were both in wine stores. And I kept meeting people in the wine industry of LA who would ask me like, okay, so what do you do outside of wine? And I'd be like, oh, I'm a musician. And they would tell me, oh, I used to be a musician. And like, I was like, if I stay in LA, I see my path towards like being a sort of like depressed alcoholic wine salesman who doesn't play music very clearly. I see very clearly how I get there. And I was like, okay, I need to leave. So I followed my then boyfriend to Mexico City 10 years ago, and I've been here ever since.
Real quick, that painting behind you, is that an ultra minimalist painting? Is it like a spot, like a splatter on there?
It's a fly.
That is so
It's a,
cool.
yeah, it's a painting of a fly. It's by this painter named Andrew Burke, who used to
Wow.
live here. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. So
That's really funny. Yeah.
I'm a visual artist myself, so
Oh, okay.
I was
Did you
grabbing
paint
that's
the background behind you?
yeah, that's mine. That's
Ah,
one of my
cool.
originals.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I always gravitate towards, kind of those specialty things. And I was thinking for a minute it was a drop of blood or something, which gave
Hmm.
me an idea for a new series. So I don't know about blood or being macabre, but it's minimalism like that is just absolutely fascinating to me. You
Mhm.
know, the thing that I don't understand right now is the selling of the banana for so much and how it's become this phenomenon. It's so weird.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just that's just like a feedback thing. Like, it's one, it's absurd, and then it gets picked up by international media, and then international media talks about how absurd it is, and then people make their own versions that are like like I've seen like an AI image of the reverse, like a piece of duct tape being held to the wall by a banana.
Yeah,
And then it just like this kind of like expands,
yeah,
even though no sense and it's not really that fascinating.
right.
Um, I don't know.
It's
It's fun.
weird. The whole
Fun.
thing.
And yeah.
It's like the ghost of Andy Warhol slept for a while and now it's getting revived. And so, so what do you like the best about being a professional musician? What wakes you up every day and makes you want to create?
Um, Other people. Music is a really, I'm going to say this word a lot. Music is a very intimate art form, and playing music is uh, very beautiful. Playing music with people. You listen to people in a way that you don't otherwise listen. You pay attention to people in a way that you don't otherwise pay attention to people. And you communicate with people in a way that you don't otherwise communicate without words. Uh, and I think that's very incredible and inspiring, and that's what inspires me to continue composing and performing music. That's what inspires me to go and see music. Um, yeah, other people playing in ensembles. I really think that improvised music is about playing with other people, and if you can't play with other people, then you don't know how to improvise.
Yeah. So for the purposes of this show, since it's jazz, I'm going to
Hmm.
ask it this way, but I know that you're into all kinds of different music. Why do you love this art form that we have called jazz?
Wow.
Mm,
It's Well, it speaks to so much. Jazz speaks to so much. It's something that's been part of my life for a very long time. But two, the music just speaks to me. These songs, like the covers that I do on this album, like Too Young to Go Steady, Charade, they're songs from like, I don't know, like 1940
yeah.
that still makes sense to me. Like I listen to them and I think about, yeah, Charade is about like kind of faking that you're in a relationship, even though you know it's not working. And like, who hasn't done that? That's like a very universal theme. Too Young to Go Steady, well, more specific. But like these are things that like really relate to, they're universal and they kind of push out to kind of anything. And and they still mean a lot to me. It's still like very sentimental. It's still very nostalgic and emotional. And I like that. I like this kind of, if we ugh, I don't I feel ridiculous saying something like this, but I feel like we live in an increasingly like cold and cruel world. And something about jazz is that it's very intimate and warm,
Yeah.
especially like older jazz, or at least it should be. Even new jazz should be intimate and warm. And uh and that's what draws me to it still.
I totally agree. Well said, because that's the way, especially in this weird, clowny world
Yeah.
of things going on. So let's say we get off the phone or we get off the Zoom call and a time machine pulls up in front of your house and you can go anywhere in the history of jazz and see one live performance with your own eyes. Where are you going?
I would see Louis Armstrong play.
Yeah.
Like a hot five, hot seven with like Sidney Bechet and man, I forgot their names. But like, yeah, I would love to see Louis Armstrong play. That'd be amazing.
Every time someone answers this, it's like reading a good book. It's like the visuals of that like warm, humid room in New Orleans with
Yeah.
just all of these people that are like ready to go, and he just pounds that air with that trumpet, and just man, that's the beginnings. That's
Yeah.
the echo that has just taken us through in this art form.
Yeah, I mean, his sound sounds so amazing on these recordings that were made with like primitive recording equipment, like we're in 2025, right? So like the first recordings are from almost 100 years ago.
Yeah,
And if he sounds so good on that, imagine what he sounded like on in person.
yeah,
Yeah, amazing.
yeah. So at the end of the day, Jacob, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, fans. everybody that you work with that you know, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Uh, yeah, I'm pretty like, hmm. Generosity is really important to me.
Yeah.
Uh, Being welcoming is very important to me. Listening is very important to me. Kindness, even to people that I don't like, is very important to me. Who am I? I don't know. I should ask my therapist.
Well, and that's the thing. This is the therapy question.
Yeah.
No, you did good. I think
Yeah.
sometimes this question, it seems like it should be longer, but sometimes the succinct, to the point answers, the ones that are the most poignant. So it's release day officially for you. If anyone wants to get this album in the best way that will benefit you, is it Bandcamp?
Yeah.
Okay. And then live shows, anything else in your world, where can they go? How can they get involved?
Live shows, they can come to Mexico City, playing here in May and June. And a bunch of other times before that as well, but with my quartet in May and June. That's about it. And everyone should come to Mexico City and check out the amazing music scenes that are here. There's an amazing jazz scene, amazing free jazz, experimental music, classical, great art scene as well. There's a lot going on here.
Right on. Jacob,
But it's not cheap.
Right. I get it. I get it.
Stop thinking that Mexico City is cheap. It's not.
Right.
Everyone told me that when I moved here. They were like, Mexico City is so cheap. And I realized within a week, like, y'all are wrong. It's not cheap at all. Yeah.
Man, this has been great. I'm glad that we caught up, especially on release day. So have a great rest of the release day. Good luck on the album. It's great to meet you, man.
I appreciate it, Joe. Thanks so much.
You bet.
Hello, friends. Joe Domino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Domino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedomino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.